Ladies and gents, a warm welcome. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome you to today's session, Circular Agri-Food and Biomass, Food and Materials for a Sustainable Future. And when I say organizers, I mean the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, the Ministry of Agriculture from the Netherlands, Food Valley and Holland Circular Hotspot. So today we'll look beyond just regenerative agriculture, but we'll also touch upon biomaterials as a blind spot in the transition to a fossil-free economy. And we'll pose dilemmas and opportunities and demonstrate Dutch innovations on food and feed and materials that we all need to live within the boundaries of our planet. And we need to act local and we need to act international. And this international component is why we're here at COP, because this is a crucial sector. And by going circular, we can more or less halve the emissions in the sector, and that's quite relevant. Circular economy is probably our secret weapon in our fight against climate issues. My name is Freek van Eyck, and I will use the clicker, then you will see who I am. Yeah, that's me. And I probably have the nicest job in the Netherlands because I'm the CEO of Holland Circular Hotspot, and we promote circular economy at the international level. And we try to create partnerships between Dutch and companies abroad in the process. So, my colleague Emma Kervasi will be the chat moderator for all the people online. Hello, everybody. We have a great program with fantastic speakers coming from the highest level of our government, coming from probably the most dynamic ecosystem on food in the Netherlands, Food Valley, coming from also probably the leading university in the world when it concerns agri-food. No pressure, Fred. And we have an amazing innovator with us, and you will hear about them soon. I will introduce them very soon. What will we have for you? We have 4 presentations. We'll have interaction with you in the room and online by Mentimeter. So please switch off the sound of your phone, but keep it with you because you will need it later on. And we will reflect at the end with the panel. So I think it's time to start this session. So without much further ado, I want to present our first speaker. And our first speaker, Donné Slangen, is the Acting Director General for Nature and Fisheries at the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. So Donné also held various other director positions within the ministry, within the government. So give him a warm hand, please.
Thank you very much. The world is gathered here this week to talk about limiting global warming. Climate policy is strongly focused on industrial carbon emissions. But good climate policy is also climate policy also requires us to rethink agricultural production, food consumption, and how we produce materials. We need to make the transition towards circular agri-food and biomass systems. It's a transition the Netherlands is investing in, because current production methods have a negative impact on our country's environment and protected nature areas. The transition to a sustainable agri-food system is complex, and to succeed, we need to cooperate with all the stakeholders in the sector. The Netherlands has a strong agricultural knowledge and innovation system in which Dutch companies, governments and knowledge institutes collaborate. Over the years, it led to many innovations that have been widely adopted by farms and agribusiness. The Netherlands has a lot of experience with this type of triple helix collaboration. The brochure we are handing out tells more about how a circular transition is possible in agri-food and biomass. It describes best practices by entrepreneurs and insights and lessons learned from public authorities and knowledge institutions. But we still have a long way to go before we achieve a sustainable circular agri-food system. We still need to overcome many environmental and social challenges. These are complex problems where we have to look not only at the effects in our own country, but also at the impact of the policy changes abroad. And that's why we need to do more international collaboration in research and innovation projects. We want to work with other countries and learn from the best practices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doné. Warm hand for Doné. So after the next speakers, we'll have a moment for questions. So for the guys online, please ask your questions through the web chat. So it's now time for our next speaker. And our next speaker is no one less than Jolijn Zwart van Kessel. She's the Innovation Lead Circular Economy from Food Valley. And she will give you a teaser on the content of our publication. A warm hand to Jolijn.
Thank you very much, Freek. I will quickly grab my notes. Great to see such a big crowd today. Welcome, and also welcome online. Thank you very much for speaking today. So who am I? My name is Jolijn Zwart van Kessel. I'm the Innovation Lead for Circular Agri-Food working at Food Valley. Food Valley is in the Netherlands, an independent foundation working on transforming the food system. We do that internationally with a wide ecosystem of over 600 partners working from farm to fork, together collaborating on innovations to move the transition forward in practice. So what am I presenting about today? Today I'm trying to give you some glimpse, but I recommend just downloading it via the QR code of the publication we designed together with the Netherlands Enterprise Agency, the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality of the Netherlands, the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, Food Valley, the top sector Agri and Food, and Holland Circular Hotspot. So, what is it about, and why do we think that there's a publication needed? Well, as we all know, and you hear this, I think, 1,000 times these days, that agriculture is a large consumer, almost the largest consumer of our natural resources, freshwater resources, and also uses a lot of energy globally. It touches upon all SDGs that are in there. But our system, our food system, is in a lock-in. It's in a lock-in because of market dynamics that we have built ourselves, policy regimes that we also build ourselves. And we created a linear system that works from farm to fork, and then it stops. But we need to think of how to reduce food losses that are in the system. You see in the picture below that food losses are quite big. In the different geographies in the world. You will see it in the brochure. So, our Dutch government has an ambition. We want to be climate neutral, fossil free, and circular by 2050. So this is why we thought of a publication to describe how we think we should get there, and also to show you some showcases in the Netherlands that are already working on that path. Because together, with these companies and with government, we together need to redesign our food systems. And we use a vision on that. And I used one of the future visions that are in the publication. That's of Imke de Boer. She's from Wageningen University, a colleague of Fred. And she's describing the donut model. You will find it in the publication as well, of which you probably also know that we need to keep within planetary boundaries. Because we need to produce together 56% more food in the same amount of earth that we have now, currently. So we need to manage the transition together. We need an integrated approach. And we need to look for synergies and decide upon trade-offs. Because we need to make sure that we have total use of every ingredient and raw material that is in the system. We need to do that better. So we think that circular agri-food and biomass has an answer. We can turn global agri-food challenges into opportunities. And those are the ones mentioned in our publication. So going circular, as the Ellen MacArthur Foundation described, is also always a good route for CO2 reduction. As you can see in this graph below, you can reduce by almost 50% of CO2 emissions if you're going circular. And this is all over the value chain because food losses are in there in every step of our linear way. But we also see something else, because when we were writing this publication, we predict that there will be a battle for resources, new resources, but also the resources that are already in our system that need to be upcycled to the highest hierarchy. And here you see the hierarchy. That, of course, we need to look at prevention. You hear this all day, every day, I think, here at COP. But then we still can upcycle a lot of side streams that are now going to the fertilizer or energy or even burnt. And we can send them upcycle them to feed or even human food. We do that at Food Valley, for instance, in our upcycling community. That's also in the publication. So what do we... sorry. I will make it quick, but I saw that I only have a few minutes left. We need to collaborate together because when there's collision of interest, we need to collaborate to make it more efficient. And we propose to use an integrative model. It's in the publication where we upcycle but also redesign via this hierarchy. And we show some examples in the publication of all these companies. They're all Dutch companies working on circular agri-food practices in all the different domains, whether it's controlled environment agriculture, whether it's alternative proteins like algae or cultivated meat. It's upcycling for food. It's very insects upcycling. It's very diverse. So here you see again the food losses, and I'm going to skip this one. This slide shows the different possibilities of the different agricultural systems, like the cattle industry, or horticulture, or arable farming, and the way that you can make them circular. I will not dive into them in detail now, but you can find it in our publication. So, some of the examples, because I can imagine that you are very interested in what's in there. For instance, a company called Liquid Seal, they seal avocados, and therefore they reduce the time that it goes to waste. So, if you can keep it longer, you waste less. Then you have a company called Greenclusive. They use biomass from agriculture and turn it into building materials instead of the chemical ones. Then this is a nice example on the Dutch Floriade, the pavilion, all made of biomass and circular building solutions. Then also a very innovative company called Peel Pioneers. They are using the waste of orange juice pressing and make aromas out of it, but also you can use the fibers and upcycle that again into all the different sectors. Then there's De Kliek, for instance. They are collecting residual waste from different cities in the Netherlands, and they use the coffee grounds that are used in restaurants to grow oyster mushrooms, and they distribute it back to the restaurants. Then a company called Protix. They are working with the black soldier fly insects, and they are upcycling it to insect proteins for aquaculture and feed. And we have a company called Host. They use the biomass for energy, fertilizer, etc. So you also find some future visions in there of all these partners that are described. I will skip it for now because I only have a small minute, but I would like to end with telling you a little bit about transition rules and transition paths, because how do we go into that circular agri-food economy for the future? You need to work together, everybody to their role, in the different phases that you work through, and you will find them in the publication as well, and I'll quickly will describe them. The first phase, you are over here, and you see that there's consumer awareness widening. And that's the phase where everybody is still doing the different things. I think for a lot of companies, we're in that phase. But then you start to collaborate and see that there's a competitive advantage if you collaborate together, you implement together some food safety rules, new norms, and really work out what are the trade-offs between efficiency and sustainability. Then you go further and see, well, maybe we can really work on pre-competitive innovation. Yesterday I heard the term pro-competition. I also like that. It's multi-stakeholder collaborations, working all the way up to where you find yourself in institutionalization, the last phase, where you faded out and really transitioned into a new system. So this is where we would like to go, and of course that will take us years, but it will take a lot of collaboration. It would need vision, but it needs also everybody at their role. So I hope you will all download a publication, let it inspire you, and let's shape the future of food together. That's what we say at Food Valley. Thank you.
A warm hand to Jolijn. And Jolijn, I know that you only scratched the surface of the publication, so thank you for doing it in such a short time. So for you guys online, ask your question to Jolijn. We'll come back to it later. Over to the next speaker. As you know, governments, they set the ambition and the boundary conditions for a transition, but in the end, we need to scale up, and the real heroes of scaling up a circular economy are companies, because they show guts, they invest, and that's what makes the difference. So we're incredibly happy that we have an amazing and inspiring innovator with us today. Let's listen to CEO Maarten Bosch, CEO of Mozameat. A warm hand, please.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon already. Thanks for having me here. It's an honor, and it's quite an introduction and quite a bar I have to raise, that I have to be very inspiring, and well, at least we try to innovate. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is cultivated meat. About 10 years ago, our company Mozameat has developed the world's first cultivated hamburger. We didn't do that because it's a cool technology, but we did it really to try to solve some of the world's biggest problems today. And I think, we talk about it a lot already today, but that was the goal back then, 10 years ago already. And I think if you look at, for instance, what Jolijn just mentioned, the demand on our food system is going to increase tremendously. 56% demand increase in the next couple of decades is a huge number. For meat, the same number applies on the demand side, but actually, because of the inefficiencies of the animals, the pressure on our resources is even a lot higher. If you look at one of the leading causes of global greenhouse gas emissions today is, we all know food, but meat, and especially beef, is disproportionately high. And this is why we have focused on beef from the start. 10 years ago, we introduced this hamburger. It was a nice proof of concept, amazingly expensive, 250,000 euros to produce, but it was a great starting point. And that's what I want to talk to you about. How are we getting this one to price parity and get it in the hands of millions of people? So basically, I'm going to talk to you about what we do, our technology very briefly, and how it aims to solve and be a solution to the world's or to the problems we've discussed. So what we do, we take a sample from a living animal through a biopsy. It's a harmless procedure, and this sample is about half a gram big. We then use the best sample or the cells, and we put them in a so-called cultivator, where we mimic the conditions that the cells would otherwise have inside the animal. We feed it with the nutrients, with the vitamins. It's at 38 degrees, and then it starts to perform its natural behavior. And that's first multiplication and then tissue formation. We make fat and muscle, which is what meat consists of, and at the end we have quantities that can produce up to 80,000 hamburgers from one sample. And it's basically the meat you all know. It performs the same, it tastes the same, but we don't have to raise and kill animals in the process. So is it then, you know, it's a nice technology, but, and you know, I can tell you it's very tasty, but it also lives up to its promise. We can reduce climate impact by 92% because we are basically having a better conversion rate than the cow. Therefore, we are much more efficient in using resources, which translates into a lot less land use, air pollution, and water usage. And therefore, this could be one of the solutions that really contributes to, you know, being able to serve the growing demand of food and specifically meat in the future. And that's what we try to aim. I'll skip this for the for time pressure. We're located in the Netherlands, so you have a lot of Dutch people talking to you, and this is the team I'm very proud to be a part of in Maastricht, working on this every day. Thank you, and look forward to questions.
So, talking about groundbreaking initiatives, thank you so much, Maarten. So in a topic which is so complex, like agri-food, which is linked with energy, with water, with health, with materials, we need some guidance, we need a vision. So we need the knowledge community, and we're very happy that we have Fred here from Wageningen University. Give him a warm hand, and he has 5 minutes to enlighten us.
Thank you, Freek. So, with all the challenges we have, we need to have future visions, as Jolijn also said. And in Wageningen, we're working on that all the time. And on the left side, you see a picture that is made by the NL2120 team, led by Tim van Hattem. They took nature and soil and water as the starting point and made a new picture of the Netherlands, how it should look like in 2120. This now has a follow-up in Europe, and it's so scaled up, but it also is scaled down to regions. So the new visions are implemented in the thought making. On the right-hand side, it's the one that was already mentioned by Jolijn from Imke de Boer. She looked at rerouting the Dutch food system and taking 6 regions in the Netherlands, where they have totally different social, economic, and agroecological backgrounds, and looked at how can we envision the best optimal situation in the future. Recently, Wageningen team also made up a document which is called the World Perspectives on Agriculture, Food and Nature, also called the Dilemmas. And these were the dilemmas that we used to talk to politicians to get them think about the future, because dilemmas means that you have to make a choice. So our president has been on national television with this twice to talk to politicians and challenge them. Now, to have a vision is very nice, but as Freek said, in Wageningen, it's very complex, broad. We need to have science-based building blocks to get from the vision, what is the future looking like, and how do we get there? And that's what we do in Wageningen, looking at all these different angles. I'm leading a program that is called Towards a Circular and Climate Neutral Society. And in this picture, you can see all the different domains that we are working on. So we work on agriculture in the middle. Can I walk over there? In the middle, agriculture, regenerative agriculture, reducing methane, alternative proteins, and so on and so on. So you can think about a lot of different applications over there. We have a part that is working on horticulture, because in horticulture there's a lot of virgin raw materials that are used. Phosphates, water, but also plastics, substrates. So how can you make sure that you use less virgin raw materials? There are projects looking into the crossovers between different sectors. So for instance, crossover from horticulture to aqua. So taking excreta from the fish to the horticulture, or using water in both. Aqua as such is also an interesting one, because at the North Sea we have a lot of these large-scale windmill farms. You can grow sea culture over there, but it needs also a new innovative approach. And we need to make sure that the carrying capacity is not exceeded. In every case, we need to be circular, and we need to make sure that we also take into account the byproducts. And byproducts going into the food and feed, as Jolijn said, but also not forget the byproducts going into materials. And we also have to look at new virgin raw materials going into the materials, sorry, because we want to get rid of the fossil fuels. All of this is very complex, as already said, so we need to manage those transitions by integrated approaches. Socioeconomics, ecologics, technology, all have to work together. We have to make sure that we have assessment frameworks, looking at where do you want to do what. We have to look at the total use of circularity by design. And in the end, we need to make sure that we balance the ecology and economy. This picture you already saw. This is based on the donut economy. And on the right-hand side, you see where the countries are situated at the moment. And you see, this is the hotspot. I cannot tell you this story in 1 minute. This is where we want to be. And basically, we're all developing countries. Also, the Western world countries are still in an area you don't want to be. So how do we get from there to there? And via which trajectory do you want to do that? And that's a very interesting discussion about what kind of economics do we need. So with that very short and complex puzzle, I'll leave you, and we're open for questions.
Thank you so much, Fred. We have some time for just a few questions to any of our speakers. So do not hesitate. This is the moment that you have this unique panel in front of you. I see a gentleman in the back. Please state your name and for whom the question is.
Okay, I'm Barend Uys from the Southern Africa Agri Initiative in South Africa, and I want to direct my question to the grown meat gentleman. So in South Africa, most of our land, the only thing you can utilize it for is for livestock keeping. We've got many thousands of, a few million actually, of small-scale farmers.
Short question, please.
Okay, that survive on the livestock. So what is the plan with, if you remove this livestock, what is the plan for replacing it? And how will that people that exist from it, how will they survive?
Thank you. Martin, a question from you. You get the mic.
Yeah, thanks for the question, and I think it's a valid question. I don't think it's necessarily the goal to replace. It's the term complementary was mentioned already. I think in order to meet the growing demand, we need all the resources we can have. So this is an additional way to create protein, plant-based, cultivated, conventional. We need probably every source, but in the mix, we need to become more efficient. And that's the goal of this technology.
Any addition from the other speakers? Jolijn, Fred, first Jolijn.
Yeah, I would say the same. It's a mix where we are aiming for, and we need to decide together what is the right balance in that mix. So what is most efficient, also in terms of CO2 footprint, as well as economics, as well as sociologics. So it's actually everything above, yeah, to take into account, as you said, Fred.
In addition to that, if you calculate the sustainability of the whole food sector, then about 30% can come from animal sources, because they are indeed living on places where we cannot grow anything else, or they absorb all the byproducts coming from the food industry. So calculations made by Hanne van Zanten, thank you, colleague of mine, they indicate that you still keep that, what you were saying, and use the byproducts, and then you have still a very sustainable food system.
Is there another hand? Short question, short answer, and then we move to the Mentimeter. You get the mic. We pass on the mic to the second row from the back.
Second row to the back.
Oh, sorry. Also on the cellular meat, when do you foresee this will be approved from regulatory perspective at European level? Because that will have implication on the rest of the world.
Martin, when will it be ready at European level? What's your prediction?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is a new technology, so there's a regulatory pathway or a process on European level called the novel food process, which is quite a high bar, which is great, and we are preparing all our submissions there, which is a relatively long pathway. It's probably 2 years and maybe a bit longer. We are also talking to other regions. I don't know if you were in the panel earlier today or the discussion where Singapore was mentioned. Singapore has, less member states, I would say. Therefore, they can offer a shorter process. And there are other jurisdictions or regions in the world that also see this opportunity and try to offer shorter pathways to market. So we're talking to all of them, but Europe is, of course, our home, and it's important for us as well to be present there.
Yeah, I think we have heard some other sentiments in Europe as well. Italy, I believe, with protection of regional products.
Yeah,
so this will be an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
So it's time for you in the room and online to interact with us. We move to the next part, and which is Mentimeter. So I asked the team, the technical team, to move the scene to the digital realm. So for you in the room here and online, please take your phone, go to www.mentimeter.com, menti.com, and type in the code, which you see at the bottom of the screen, 75925834. So we need your interaction here, so take your time, log in, and we see now another code here appearing, which is... We like surprises at the last moment. 81909452. Do you have this? 81909452. For those who are already inside, we have a warming up question, a very easy question, we think. And the question is, agri-food and biomass should be a top priority at every global forum where it's around food, climate, biodiversity, or circularity. You can answer with yes, or you can answer with no. So... I think we have a winner here so far. So sort of we expected with this audience to be the answer to go in this direction, but we have one no, very good, two. We have opposing means. So the input you see here, your answers will be input for the panel. So we're very curious to see what's their opinion. Let's go to the next question, please. I can't click, this is online. 18.2, yes. Okay, you remember that Jolijn was talking from farm to fork, with all the steps in between, from agriculture, processing, logistics, use, etc. From your personal perspective or your intuition, what would be your top priority for action? Alternative proteins? Is it regenerative food production? Is it smart farming? Or do you say greenhouses, this controlled environment for large cities, that's the way to go? Is it horticulture, vertical farming? Is it valorization of residues, very circular of course? Or is it bioresources that we need to make all our products which we have, we need to make them without fossil fuels? So for instance with bioresidues. What is your alternative? Nog 5 more seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much. Eliminating food waste, prevention. Hey, we see a nice tendency. Speakers, take a mental picture of this. Or take a quick screenshot. Okay, let's go to the next question then. Thank you, technicians. What should be the top priority for agri-food and biomass? Now, think a little bit about these questions. So raw materials and chemicals for the industry. Do we realize the sheer scale of the chemical industry to make the products we use every day? If we want to be fossil fuel, shouldn't we use residues from agriculture? Or you say, of course, food is number one. But what about climate change? We need an energy transition. Shouldn't we use all the bioenergy we can get, renewable energy? Or do you say, diplomatic, everything is as important? May we have your voice, your votes, please? We see an interesting race. Keep moving. Make a mental picture, dear panelists. Human food is on top for now. Interesting. Now let's go to the final question to pick your brain on who should be responsible. No, let's say I link the answers to this hierarchy. Remember, prevention, human food, feed, materials, fertilizer, and energy. Let's see if your choices were in line with this hierarchy which we set out. Next question, please. And that question will be, who will be responsible for the transition? Do we look at the almighty government to lead the way? Or do you say it's industry, because they invest, they scale, they should be the most important? Or do we need first the insights from the researchers? Or is it us consumers? Because we, in the end, we vote for politicians. We vote for products by buying them. So we are, in the end, the most important actor. Or is it NGOs who keep us sharp, who show us what we should do? But the world is around money, so maybe it's the financiers who have the biggest voice. So what's your pick on this one? So let's do another 5 seconds or so to vote, also online. Maybe have your votes, please. The panelists have their mental memory, of course. What's happening here? I see industry, government, all of the above. Very interesting. Well, I think this, I will see even a thump going on. Very interesting. So I think we have to go back to the main presentation again. This was the last one. And this is the moment that we will, in the meantime, will ask. Yes, can I use the? Okay, so it's time for a panel discussion. So we'll move the, let's say, the bar stools up front. We put them to the side not to block your view. And we're, of course, very interesting to know their first impression, what they think of this, of these results. I want to start with you, Doné. Your first impression of the outcome of the Mentimeter. Yeah. What surprised you most, or what do? It was quite. It's okay.
Actually, it was quite predictable. I think the integrated approach was quite was quite balanced on the screen. I think so. And we work from the point of view of the food system, and then you have to look at all the other issues. So, I think within the boundaries of the earth and the food system we have to deal with all those issues. And I think, for me, it was quite in balance and also predictable. Also.
Okay, yeah. Let's see if Jolijn agrees with you.
Yeah, I agree as well. I actually looked at the transformation one because as Food Valley, we're practice leaders in that food system transformation. And what I saw is that everything is important. But what I also saw is that NGOs are rated quite low. And I think if you looked at what I described in the phases, that in that phasing model, we see that everybody plays a role, but in every phase, every of these mentioned partners, stakeholders in that food transition play a different role. So in some of the phases, for instance, the first phase, the NGOs that are really activist and really want to wake us up and say, yeah, guys, we need to move, they play a very big role. But then later on, you see that industry picks up and they have to make new business models out of these new innovations. And this is what we see at Food Valley in our communities on upcycling, or we work with regenerative agriculture industry and with insects. So we see that day to day, and they're struggling to get a new business model out because there's not a market out yet. So this is where you are sort of moving into the second phase already, and this is why partners collaborate also with us, because then you will try and slowly move into the third phase. But what you see in that phases, then also all the other partners need to come in. For instance, government needs to come in on the food safety ruling. You see that in your example, I think, very well. But also on insect, that's where government also needs to come in. Same goes, I think, for plant protein, because there our government wants to see more plant protein being produced in the Netherlands, for instance, but still farmers don't get the right price for it, so there's no incentive. So you see that in every phase we need partners to come in. And the last one I wanted to really mention is the investments. We see that still investments on all the different agri-food sectors lag behind. Usually, even in circularity, they really lag behind, because in financing circular solutions, it's very difficult to finance because the solutions are usually not a one-party solution. You need more partners to work
It's about the
together.
value chain, yes.
Yeah, it's about collaboration. And usually the investment bankers are focusing on just the one business model for that one company.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the challenge that I would like to lay out for investment. Make there a new business model.
Okay, I will give this mic actually to Maarten. And I take the mobile one to ask questions from the room later.
Great. Thanks.
Just one remark based on what Jolijn said. I think for some non-Dutchies here in the room, the Netherlands is the second largest food exporter after the US. So everything which has to do with regulation and export is very sensitive. So things like food quality and risk is extremely, let's say, crucial and is looked upon in very, very detail. So you might go slow, maybe. Your reflections on the outcome?
Yeah, just if I take a step back and just look at, for instance, the COP conference and the last ones we had the last couple of years, food is getting a lot more attention, which is great. And I think it starts with acknowledging that food has such a big impact. And that's the first point. The second point is food is very complicated, value chain. And that's kind of underlining what we saw here and what Jolijn and Donné were saying. You know, it's actually all of the above, and we need to work on from every angle to tackle this. Collaboration is going to be key, and just as a last point, don't forget your own role in your personal decisions, which is always something you can influence without pointing at someone else and waiting.
What you can do yourself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Very well said. Over to you, Fred. So people in the room, in the meantime, prepare your questions for this panel. We'll count on you, or you just get the mic from me. Fred.
Yeah, I was looking at the different topics that we needed to tackle, and the one on top was, I think, reducing food waste, if I remember correctly. Yeah, you're okay. Which I think is a logical one, because that about 30% of what we produce is lost. So I think that could be, well, I want to say the quick fix, which is not true, because then we should have done it already. But there's a lot to gain there, and I think that indeed I agree then with the audience that we need to focus on that to at least make very good steps. We also need all the partners again there, because I was involved in a project recently where we looked at raw materials that were not allowed to be used in feed yet, and then we need the government, because then regulations have to be changed. But we need science to show that it is safe to take food waste back again to the feed. So we need companies who do that, and this was actually a public-private partnership with a lot of companies involved with different side streams. So I think this was a very nice example of showing how you can work together, and then in the end, with science-based facts, go to the government and say, hey, you see, it's safe, so why don't we start using this material again? So I think it underlines what you were saying, but also about the topic that was chosen.
Thank you so much. Questions from the room? The gentleman here, I walk to you. I keep the microphone in my hand, so I don't give it to you.
Okay, I am from Argentina. A short reflection. I think the farmers need to lead the transition for a more sustainable way to produce. It's not even in the options. You need to involve farmers in this. You have some experience with this point in Netherlands. I think my advice is involve farmers in the transition to a more sustainable way to produce.
Thank you so much. Did we have to go all the way to Argentine to get this message, Jolijn?
Well, yeah, this is, of course, a message from the heart, because I have a farm at home. I think my dad will be watching. He's farming during all days, so I'm not sitting on the tractor that much anymore, actually almost never. Yeah, farmers play a huge role here, but they need to be facilitated to really move and to be helped with all the other partners in the food system. Because if we say, they should just do it, it's just not possible. They are in a lock-in. Yeah, they definitely... Oh yeah, I think they will definitely can lead, but we need to help them. And I think now usually I see that there's a lot of other partners in the field or in the food system playing a huge role, and the farmer's voice is maybe not always on the table, even here at COP.
I think Doné wants to react as well.
And actually, that's the fault we made in the Netherlands. We thought we had to create a perspective for the farmers, but we forgot the chain. And now we involve them, and they have to take the responsibility to make the real change. But you have to let them participate, because at this time the farmers are the earning model of the whole chain, and that's not a good way. And I think of food waste, we have to revalue our food again, because it's too cheap, I think.
Final reflection from Fred, and then we go to a question here in the corner.
Coming back to Argentina or the involvement of farmers, I think that's a very good point, a very valid point. And what we see now in a lot of projects, also from the university side, is that they are done together with the farmers. For instance, the future vision that is in the brochure made by Professor Imke de Boer, she actually did that with NGOs and with farmers, looking at the future. So it was not a vision by her as a professor, as a theoretician, but really together with the people in the field. What should be the future vision of you in your landscape, and how are we going to get there? So I think that is I think something that is changing for the good at the moment.
Thank you, Fred. We have a question here. Please state your name and for whom the question is. Okay.
Hi, I'm Hamish from the Waste and Resources Action Programme, WRAP. It's for everyone, really. The question, once we take a waste, what is currently a waste, and make it a product, and that has a price, including very low prices, we change the economics of the original industry, and that can create some perverse incentives, thinking about like animal fats for sustainable aviation fuel, for example. How do we get this circular transition without unintentionally subsidizing wasteful and polluting industries?
All right, who wants to react? Dear panel?
I'll give it a try. In my program, there's a project called Alternative Economic Paradigms. And they're looking at exactly at those questions. So how can we get away from those negative incentives and go towards positive incentives? I was talking to my colleague this week about it, and it's quite a complex discussion. I don't have the answer yet. Just to tell you that they're working on it, and basically it's the donut discussion. Do you stay within above the social boundaries and within the planetary boundaries? You probably need to think about an alternative economic system. But that's a difficult discussion, yeah.
I think the wrong incentives definitely have an impact. We've seen what happened with palm oil, that we cut down rainforests to produce palm oil. That's not where we want to go. Jolijn, short answer?
Yeah, not so much on the very big questions with food against aviation or something, but to make it very practical, what we do at Food Valley is that we really talk to companies that have a byproduct, by stream, that have huge food losses, so it's not at the consumer side, but really all in the value chain, so it's masses. That now, for instance, like if you're a beer brewer, you think now that that's your product, but it actually could be that your brewer spent grain that you're now going to give to feed to animals, or it's being burnt somewhere in the world, could actually be the new product that you will have for yourself as a beer brewer. But that gets discarded very much now in their whole model. So actually, we talk to partners and say, listen, maybe you should re-evaluate what your mission is and purpose is in the value chain, because it might be that you're not a beer brewer, you might be just an ingredient producer with different streams. Which one of them is being beer?
I like your example with the peel pioneers. When you have an orange peel, what do you see? You think, waste, I have to discard it, I have to pay for it. You think, proteins, perfume, fibers. And that's the value perspective I think we love in circular economy. One final reflection from my side. If nature doesn't have a voice and the environmental impact is not priced, then of course you get, let's say, the wrong movement, like the palm oil example, and cutting down rainforests. So that's another thing, long-term thing we have to work with, also at the international area. First question was here, and then we go to the back.
Hi everyone, Saida here. I wanted to ask regarding the circular food system or circular economy, which is super great. We're moving towards that in the future. Where do you see the vulnerable communities sit within the circular ecosystem? Because although we do have a lot of organizations that work hard to make sure that they have access to the basic needs, still 800 million are hungry. So how can we ensure that the vulnerable communities have access to affordable food and basic needs within the circular ecosystem?
I think fair value change. I look a little bit at the donut of the were, actually. Is that something you can reflect on, Fred, or is there a volunteer from the ministry? Or
I can make one remark of it. What I see is that if you look at where are the food losses sitting, you see that there's still quite a lot to gain in the developing world. There's a lot of efficiency already in our value chains. But what you also see is that there, in a lot of countries in the world, there are still issues with a lot of losses are made in the whole food value chain all the way up to the consumer. So there are still a lot of things to gain to feed people if we can upcycle these side streams that are now being lost and really turn them into food. Because there's quite a lot that still can be managed there, also in terms of cooling techniques, to keep longer, the sealing method, but also just to make sure that these streams are not being wasted, but that they're being brought back into the value chain. So I think that there's not simple, but it's quite nearby, actually. These are techniques that we already can apply, but are not applied.
I know the example of Kumasi, who helps local cacao farmers. And instead of wasting the byproduct, they make a drink out of the things that they don't use. And the profit goes to them, to the local farmers. So that could be a way.
Yeah, maybe also a very practical example. We did that in the Netherlands, but you can also apply it everywhere where you grow tomatoes, for instance. We worked with an innovation company on a challenge where we could use the leaves of tomatoes and grow them and upcycle them again into plant-based protein for human consumption even, or for feed. You can do that anywhere in the world. We have a problem with the food safety, of course. It will go into novel food in Europe, but still, if you do that worldwide, you can even feed people from the tomato leaves, which are now being used for composting, or sometimes even worse, just being burnt.
Okay, I'm also monitoring the online questions, but first we have a question from the room. Please introduce yourself and for whom is your question?
Hi, I'm Titta Kotilainen from Natural Resources Institute Finland, and actually my question is related to novel foods, because now I think companies might flee out of Europe because of the legislation. So what would you do to streamline the legislation here in Europe? How would you approach that?
Donné and Maarten, you are the appointed volunteers here.
Well, I'm maybe exactly the wrong person to ask that question to, because the question is, what would you do to streamline it? You know, I'm a pragmatic entrepreneur. I would say just do it. Look at the examples that are out there, and why overcomplicate things. We all want the same objective, that it's thoroughly tested and that it's safe for human consumption. We all underline that. So there are examples out there where these processes can be shorter, yet equally thorough. And I would say just motivate or stimulate collaboration on a global level. We have a global problem here, a global challenge, and we really need also on this level collaboration. I know the Dutch government is, for instance, working together with Singapore to learn from each other. I know more governments are involved. That's exactly what needs to happen. And then an open mind within Europe to actually take those best practices and put them at work.
Donné, government regulation, somehow I think of you. Can you give a reflection?
Actually, I don't start with regulation. I think it starts with collaboration and the vision, because we have a protein strategy, and from that protein strategy we collaborate. And maybe in the end we need regulation, but it's not the starting point.
What about aligning at the European level?
Yeah, that's why we are a member of the European community. So yeah, I think in the end we need that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, another question from the room. The minister in the white suit.
Thank you. I might, some people I asked the question in previous panel as well, but I'm Tim Reiser. I'm from Amsterdam, working for the Plant-Based Treaty. It was mentioned already about how to get the farmers on board in the transition. Now, we can't really innovate animal farming anymore. You can't cramp animals, in tinier cages and put them in more hermeneutically sealed laboratory conditions. So obviously, there are going to be a lot of stranded assets. So we need to start thinking about repurposing. What is happening in that field? I mean, I know in the Netherlands it was mentioned that our policy of the phase out of 50% of livestock by using 25 billion of taxpayers' money was not really popular. Currently, most of the animal barns in the Netherlands, which are, as you know, laboratory conditions, the number one repurposing currently being executed is retrofitting into narcotic production systems. So that means that drug cartels are better at providing animal farmers with new incentives than the Dutch government, which is quite sad to conclude. So I mean, I work with several organizations that help retrofit animal barns into other production facilities. What is your take on that? Is this being researched? Is this feasible? Because I think this is the golden panacea.
So this is also about transitioning the sector, and maybe, in other words, I see a discussion in the Netherlands, should we go from volume to value, but how to do that? Maybe some reflections, can we go to less volume based, more value? Fred, of course, we need scientists in moments like this.
Yeah, the future vision of Imke de Boer is really aiming at that, and she's even going beyond the ambition of the Dutch government. We are now at 60% animal protein, 40% plant. The ambition is 50-50 and then 60-40 the other way around. And she mentions 75% or 75% plant-based. So there are future visions formed. As you mentioned, it's not that easy to just buy out farmers, and it's not very popular. What I mentioned about the dilemmas, one of the dilemmas is actually is about this topic. So, what kind of animal production do we need in the Netherlands, and do we still want to be the number one exporter or number two exporter? Does that fit with the Netherlands? And we're not having the answers yet. I mean, the dilemmas are there, as I mentioned, to challenge and to say, on the one hand, if you just stay like this, these are the consequences. Well, you mentioned a couple of them. But if you go to the other side, there's also consequences. There's also trade-offs. So, what are the frameworks for assessment? What are the decisions we need to take? So yes, it is under investigation to look at that. I don't have the clear answer yet, but we're certainly looking into it. Yeah.
So let's link this with one of the things we see happening is maybe a fight for who owns the biomass and where does it go. How can we deal with, let's say, the chemical industry needing, let's say, input for their materials versus food versus feed? Are we going to do feed on the most fertile land, and on the non-arable land we grow resources? Some reflections. And I was thinking of Donné and Jolijn here.
Yeah.
Final question.
Yeah, final question. Well, I actually liked Imke's work that she did there because I think that it's very important for all the farmers in the Netherlands to really have an idea of what is possible to grow, what is needed, and how much do we need for what sector, and what is best grown on what place.
So first,
and how can
fact-based.
and how can we work with science, with government, and also with the farmers themselves, because they are entrepreneurs. They want to choose for themselves what they farm, and we need to do that in a collaborative way. So it's not dictating from government what you should make. I think it's not science dictating. It's not maybe also the farmer or economics dictating. But how can we bring that together and work out a model which really also works with the different hierarchies that we showed in the publication? Because I think that we don't even know in the Netherlands what we need for what sectors. Because there's already, I think, a challenge on farm level for, are you going to farm for the building capacity Are we going to grow elephant grass everywhere in the Netherlands, or are we also doing something for feed for our cattle stock? Are we also doing something for food?
All right.
And what is the best? We don't know.
Let's ask Doné what's his opinion, his takeaway on it. What should be the next steps?
The next step will be actually we have to make that policy together, and it's important that we look at the boundaries of our environment, of our nature, of the ecosystem. So that is our starting point, and for that we need all those elements. Depending on the land and water system we have, what choices you make. And actually, you have to do that together, because we can't decide about the entrepreneurship of a farmer or someone else. So that's on society. We can set the targets, and we did it with the protein strategy. We can give the information on water and soil, and also the policy we have there, because we have a policy I think it was in the beginning of this year in the Parliament. The water and soil is a starting point for planning. So in our new spatial planning in the Netherlands, water and soil will be determining in your functional choices you make, the choices of functions. So that will be our guidelines, but you have to do it together. You have to do it together.
Ongoing process, but collaborative by force.
Yeah, and there is in the Netherlands there's a huge urgency to do that, because we have many challenges to face. So, yeah.
Okay, and we want to be in dialogue with everybody here in the room and online. I think I come to some closing words. Unfortunately, we are at the end. We could talk for another hour, I think. And I think, as we have seen from the presentation from Jolijn in this beautiful brochure that you have to download and must read, that action is already happening today in most countries in the world, from the beginning of the value chain to the end. And with links to not only, let's say, regenerative agriculture, but also to materials, textiles, chemicals. And by going circular, we can halve the emissions in the sector. So it's really our secret weapon in the climate action. But we need to scale up, and we can only do that together. That's a very important lesson. And we have to work more and better circular solutions everywhere. If there's one sector truly circular, I think it's the sector of agri-food. That's, I think, why we're here. We see this competition. This brochure is also handing us a toolbox to stimulate the debate and learn from each other where we can go. So invite you to go there. I applaud the food powerhouse, the Netherlands, by wanting to make this transition from volume to value, and that they transforming from an efficient agricultural system to a circular one. And I invite you to read, let's say, this publication we have made. Finally, it's time to act. That's why we're here at the COP. Everybody is saying, I think frontrunners are proving that it can be done already today and can be done everywhere. So today, to you, I say, today is the first day of the rest of your life. So let's together create the future we all want and need. Thank you. Give a warm applause for these wonderful panels.